She smiled while tearing our family apart. My sister got pregnant by my older sister's fiancé. And nobody saw it coming. The betrayal was calculated, cruel, and unforgettable. Everyone in our family had secrets, but I never imagined that my youngest sister, Lily, could create the kind of chaos that would shatter our family's fragile peace. I grew up in a household where appearances mattered more than feelings, and where my older sister, Rachel, was considered perfect, smart, beautiful, organized, and deeply loved by everyone, especially by her fiancé, Mark. Mark seemed like the ideal guy, attentive, charming, and utterly devoted to Rachel. Everyone assumed he was untouchable to drama until Lily appeared. Lily, on the other hand, had always been unpredictable. From a young age, she exhibited behaviors that no one could fully understand. She was charming when it suited her, manipulative without effort, and capable of emotional cruelty that seemed almost instinctive. Family dinners often ended with whispered complaints about her attitude, but she rarely faced real consequences. Her smiles could charm strangers, but within our household, her moods could unsettle everyone in minutes. It started with small things: a stolen diary, a lie about finishing homework, or subtle manipulations of friends. But then her attention shifted to something and someone that nobody could have expected: Mark. At first, it was subtle. She commented on his clothes, laughed at his jokes louder than Rachel did, lingered near him during family gatherings. I tried to dismiss it as harmless flirtation, but my instinct screamed that Lily's behavior was deliberate. One evening, our family gathered for dinner. Rachel and Mark were discussing wedding plans, and Lily sat across the table, smirking faintly while sipping her drink. I caught her staring at Mark for longer than seemed normal, a look in her eyes that was more calculating than admiring. I whispered to my best friend I confided in him because I couldn't trust anyone else, and he said, "You're imagining it. It's just sibling rivalry." But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Then came the first incident I could not ignore. Rachel had left the room to answer a phone call, and Lily, sitting next to Mark, leaned in just slightly too close. She laughed at something he said and touched his arm, innocent, one might say, but something about the way she did it made the air in the room tense. Mark, polite and oblivious, laughed nervously and moved his hand away, but Lily's grin widened. That grin, it was the first real signal that she wasn't just teasing. She was plotting. Over the next few weeks, subtle manipulations escalated. Lily would accidentally brush against Mark in hallways, comment on how stressed Rachel seemed, or offer to help Mark with small tasks that Rachel normally handled. Every time, she positioned herself as the indispensable, understanding, and slightly mysterious presence in his life. She knew exactly how to charm and unsettle, and Mark, despite his devotion, seemed increasingly distracted. I tried to warn Rachel, but every time I brought it up, she dismissed it. "You're overthinking it," she said, brushing my concerns aside. "Lily is just being Lily. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to dismiss the nagging feeling in my gut, the way Lily's eyes glinted whenever she was near Mark, but something told me this was far from normal. It wasn't long before whispers began outside the family. Some friends of Lily's started dropping comments, subtle hints about her obsession with Mark. At first, it was vague jokes about how she'd sneak in during wedding planning, or how she seemed too interested in every detail Rachel shared. But as time went on, the hints became darker, more personal, and impossible to ignore. Then, one evening, I walked past Lily's room and overheard her speaking on the phone. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial, and she was laughing quietly. "Don't worry," she said. "Everything is going according to plan. Soon, he'll be mine, and Rachel will never see it coming." I froze. My heart pounded. I had never, ever heard my sister speak like that. Not about friends, not about school, never. The words sliced through me, terrifyingly clear. She wasn't just mischievous. She was scheming something dangerous, something personal, and Mark was at the center of it. From that moment on, I realized there was no turning back. Lily had crossed an invisible line, and the storm that was coming would consume everyone in our family. My older sister, the one who trusted her fiancé completely, was blissfully unaware. And I, the only one who sensed the danger, had to figure out how far Lily would go and whether anyone could stop her before it was too late. The tension in our household escalated over the next few weeks. Lily's behavior became more audacious, more deliberate. She didn't hide her actions. She simply cloaked them in the guise of innocence, knowing that appearances were everything in our family. She would linger near Mark whenever Rachel wasn't looking, offer to run errands for him, and even coincidentally appear when he needed help with small tasks. Each interaction was calculated, subtle, and designed to make him feel understood in a way Rachel never could. I watched helplessly as Mark, despite being attentive and kind, started to grow distracted. His laughter with Lily lingered longer than it should have. His casual compliments to her felt personal, and there were moments when he seemed uncomfortable, yet unable to resist her manipulations. I tried to confront him privately. "Mark," I said one evening while helping him with a wedding task, "you need to set boundaries with Lily. She's not normal." He laughed nervously, brushing off my concern. "She's my fiance's little sister. She's harmless," he said. But I saw it, the hesitation, the guilt, the subtle tension in his shoulders. He wanted to believe me, but he didn't want to confront what was already happening. Then came the first real sign of danger. Rachel had gone out for a day-long seminar, leaving Mark and Lily alone in the house for a few hours. I stayed close, pretending to be busy in my own room, but I couldn't resist watching from the doorway. What I saw made my stomach twist. Lily had Mark seated in the living room, handing him drinks, laughing at jokes only she could make, leaning closer than any sister should, and brushing against his arm in a manner that was deliberate, sensual, calculated. Mark looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, but he didn't push her away. And then she leaned forward, whispering something I couldn't hear, her eyes glittering with triumph. I left immediately, heart racing, knowing that this wasn't just flirtation, it was manipulation on a level I had never witnessed. Lily wasn't just testing boundaries. She was orchestrating a plan, and it was working. The following days were unbearable. Lily's behavior became more brazen. She would post subtly suggestive comments on social media, knowing Mark would see them. She left accidental notes for him to find when Rachel wasn't around, each carefully written to make him feel special and isolated. I began documenting everything, afraid that no one else would believe me when the inevitable fallout occurred. Then, the shocking revelation came. It started with a whispered conversation I overheard at a friend's house. Lily had told a close friend, someone she trusted completely, that she was already pregnant. The friend, horrified, couldn't believe what she had heard. Lily laughed. "It's perfect," she said. "Soon everything will be mine. Rachel will never see it coming, and Mark will have no choice but to stay." I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. My sister, my psychopathic, manipulative sister, had crossed every imaginable line. She wasn't just flirting or testing limits anymore. She had already carried out the ultimate betrayal, and it was only a matter of time before the rest of the family discovered the truth. The challenge now wasn't just to reveal her plan, it was to protect Rachel from the heartbreak, Mark from manipulation, and, in some sense, myself from the chaos that was about to engulf our family. I realized that I couldn't confront Lily directly. She was too calculating, too dangerous. Every word, every action would be scrutinized and potentially used against me. I began devising a strategy. I documented everything meticulously: conversations, encounters, notes, social media interactions. I took photos, screenshots, and wrote down times, dates, and descriptions. If there was any hope of exposing Lily before irreversible damage was done, I needed evidence and I needed to act carefully. But Lily was unpredictable. The more I watched, the more I realized that she thrived on control, chaos, and secrecy. She seemed to anticipate everyone's movements, to predict reactions, to manipulate events without leaving a trace. Every plan I thought of to confront her risked backfiring spectacularly. The days passed like walking on eggshells. Rachel remained blissfully unaware, trusting both her fiancé and her younger sister. Mark was increasingly distracted, though he didn't understand why. And Lily. Lily was smiling, always smiling, knowing exactly how much power she held over everyone in the house. I knew one thing for certain: the moment of truth was coming. It wasn't a question of if the secret would be revealed, but when. And when it happened, nothing in our family would ever be the same. By the time Rachel returned from her seminar, Lily had already shifted into her next phase of manipulation. Nothing about her behavior was subtle anymore, at least, not for those who were paying attention. She had begun planting seeds of doubt in Rachel's mind, making sly comments about Mark's focus, as if he were distracted or stressed. One evening, Rachel asked me to help her organize the wedding guest list. I noticed Lily hovering nearby, pretending to help but mostly watching our interactions like a predator studying its prey. When I tried to steer the conversation back to logistics, Lily interjected with a calculated tone: "Maybe Mark is just worried about all the responsibilities. I wouldn't blame him if he felt overwhelmed." Rachel frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," Lily said, smiling innocently. "I just worry about him." Her words were designed to confuse, to create suspicion where none existed. And it was working. I saw the doubt flicker in Rachel's eyes, a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in her trust. Then came the social media storm. Lily posted pictures and stories with double meanings, all seemingly innocent, yet crafted to make Mark appear inattentive or suggest that he had a secret connection with her. I noticed the way Mark would glance nervously at his phone, his focus wavering during conversations with Rachel. The perfect fiancé, now subtly manipulated by the youngest sister. I confronted Lily once, quietly, in my room. "Stop it. You're going too far," I whispered, my voice trembling. She smiled. "Too far? I haven't even started. Everyone underestimates me. But that's the fun part. Watch and learn." I realized then that she wasn't just reckless, she was strategic, precise, and terrifyingly patient. She understood how to use perception, timing, and subtle emotional manipulation to achieve her goals. The next weekend, things escalated. Rachel and Mark went out for dinner, leaving Lily and me alone in the house. I thought she might behave normally, or at least quietly. Instead, she pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages she had prepared in advance. "You know," she said casually, "sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes people fall into situations they can't control." I froze. She didn't need to finish the sentence for me to understand the meaning. Her smile widened, her eyes glinting with calculation. Over the next few hours, she laid out her plan in fragments. She spoke of accidents and misunderstandings, of moments that would push Mark closer to her and farther from Rachel, all without anyone suspecting a thing. She described how she could use subtle timing, charm, and manipulation to isolate him emotionally, and even suggested ways to make it appear as if Rachel was overreacting. It was horrifying. She wasn't joking. She wasn't just seeking attention or being mischievous, she had a plan, a meticulous strategy, and she had already begun to implement it. I knew I had to warn Rachel, but every time I considered it, fear stopped me. Lily's manipulations were subtle, her influence insidious, and I had no idea how she might retaliate if exposed. Confronting her directly could backfire in unimaginable ways. And yet, doing nothing felt like letting a disaster unfold right before my eyes. By the end of the night, I realized one chilling fact: the longer Lily went unchallenged, the stronger her control would become. She was no longer a mischievous younger sister, she was a predator, and everyone in the family was her unwitting prey. From that moment on, I began a careful surveillance of her movements, conversations, and interactions. I documented everything: texts, posts, social interactions, even the way she positioned herself physically around Mark. Every detail mattered. Because one thing was certain: when the truth came out, it would be explosive. And only with proof could I hope to stop her before she destroyed everything. But as I watched her plotting, smiling, and maneuvering like a master strategist, I knew that this battle wouldn't be simple. Lily was clever, relentless, and utterly fearless. And what terrified me most was that she thrived in secrecy, feeding off the tension and control she held over everyone, making it almost impossible to predict her next move. The question now wasn't if she would strike again, it was when, and whether anyone could survive the consequences of her cunning before the damage became irreversible. The following week, Lily's manipulations escalated into something far more dangerous. She had already gained a subtle emotional foothold over Mark. And now her actions began to threaten the stability of Rachel's relationship openly. It started with small coincidences during family events. Lily would find a way to be alone with Mark, often under the pretense of asking for help or sharing secrets. She was always careful to time her interactions when Rachel was busy or distracted. Each meeting was brief, calculated, and designed to leave Mark thinking, consciously or unconsciously, about her rather than Rachel. One evening, Rachel came home early from work, unannounced, and walked into the living room. Mark was sitting next to Lily on the couch. Lily's head was tilted close to his, their shoulders almost touching. She laughed at something he said, the sound soft and intimate. Rachel froze, her eyes narrowing. "What are you two doing?" she asked, voice steady but tinged with suspicion. "Nothing," Mark said quickly, flustered. Lily's smile didn't falter. "Just helping him with a project," she said smoothly, brushing her hair back and looking entirely innocent. But the tension was palpable. Rachel didn't believe it, and I could see the doubt forming in her mind. That night, Rachel came to me, frustrated and confused. "Do you think Lily is too close to Mark?" she asked quietly, worry etched on her face. I hesitated, knowing that telling her outright could backfire. "I think you should watch carefully," I said cautiously. "Just be aware of how she behaves around him." Rachel nodded but looked uncertain. Lily had a talent for appearing harmless, and even Rachel, perceptive and smart, struggled to trust her own instincts when confronted with Lily's charm. The next day, Lily took things even further. She sent Mark a series of texts under the guise of concern, questions about his feelings, subtle hints that Rachel didn't fully understand him. She even created situations where she could be alone with him during errands or short trips, each carefully orchestrated to build a sense of intimacy and dependency. One afternoon, I caught a conversation between them in the garage while Rachel was out shopping. Lily's tone was calm, seductive, and manipulative. "You deserve to feel understood," she said softly. "Sometimes, the people closest to you don't see the truth. But I do." Mark looked uncomfortable, shifting uncomfortably, but he didn't leave. That was when I realized the extent of Lily's psychological control. She didn't need to force him. She made him question his own loyalty and perception, creating guilt, doubt, and need, all at the same time. By now, I was terrified not only for Rachel but for the entire family. Lily's plan had moved from subtle manipulations to actions that could irreparably damage relationships. And the thought that she might already be pregnant added a horrifying dimension. This wasn't just about jealousy or attention, it was about creating a scenario that would force the family into chaos, whether they realized it or not. I started documenting everything meticulously: screenshots, recordings, even detailed notes on their interactions. Every move, every subtle touch, every whispered comment was evidence of her intent. If the worst happened, I needed proof, but Lily was always one step ahead. She seemed to sense suspicion and adjusted her behavior, appearing innocent whenever anyone was near, and only carrying out her schemes when she was alone with Mark or in situations no one could observe. By the end of the week, the household was a minefield. Rachel sensed something was wrong but couldn't pinpoint what. Mark was conflicted, confused, and slowly being drawn into Lily's manipulative orbit, and I, desperate to prevent disaster, realized that confronting Lily directly might ignite a confrontation I wasn't prepared for. Every day that passed, the stakes grew higher. Lily's manipulations were no longer hidden. The impact was visible, tangible, and frighteningly close to shattering the family. I knew one thing with certainty: if I didn't act soon, the consequences could be catastrophic, and there might be no turning back. The tension in the house had reached a breaking point. Rachel was increasingly suspicious, Mark was distracted, and I was exhausted from trying to monitor Lily's actions while protecting everyone. But nothing could have prepared us for the revelation that changed everything. It started with a simple phone call. Lily called Rachel in the middle of the afternoon, sounding calm and collected. "Rachel," she said sweetly, "there's something you need to know. Something that affects all of us." Rachel's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Lily's tone didn't waver. "I'm pregnant." There was a long silence on the line. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth, her face drained of color. What? What do you mean? She whispered. Lily laughed softly, almost melodically. I'm pregnant. And it's Mark's. The words hit like a physical blow. My stomach churned, and I felt a cold wave of fear sweep over me. I had known Lily was dangerous, manipulative, and capable of calculated cruelty. But this was beyond anything I had imagined. She had crossed the ultimate line, creating a betrayal that would ripple through every relationship in the family. Rachel hung up, trembling. I rushed to her side. She was pale, silent, trying to process the incomprehensible news. She couldn't, Rachel stammered, tears forming in her eyes. Mark, how could he? Mark had just arrived home. He saw Rachel crying and rushed to her side, confusion and panic overtaking his features. Rachel, what's happening? What did she say? I tried to intervene, to explain, but even I struggled with the truth. The reality was undeniable. Lily had deliberately manipulated him, taken advantage of his trust, and now she had created a situation that could destroy lives. The next hours were chaos. Rachel confronted Mark, her voice trembling with anger and heartbreak. He protested, shock and guilt written across his face. Lily, of course, remained calm, sitting back with a small, satisfied smile. She had anticipated the confrontation, calculated every reaction, and now watched the fallout unfold like a choreographed performance. Our parents were called, and their reactions were a mixture of disbelief and anger. They couldn't comprehend that their youngest child had engineered such a betrayal. I tried to explain Lily's manipulations, her gradual emotional control over Mark, the warnings I had tried to give. But it was difficult. The situation was explosive, emotional, and overwhelming. Lily, enphased, added fuel to the fire. She spoke to Mark privately, emphasizing his responsibility and the supposed bond they now shared. Her calm, manipulative tone only made the situation more confusing for him. It was impossible to separate truth from deception, manipulation from reality, because Lily had woven both into a perfect web. Rachel retreated to her room, sobbing. Mark followed, desperate to explain, to make sense of the chaos. I stayed behind, documenting, observing, trying to piece together the next steps. The house felt like a war zone, with every glance, every word, every interaction loaded with tension and uncertainty. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the depth of Lily's psychological control. This wasn't a simple case of betrayal. It was a carefully orchestrated, deliberate plan to disrupt, dominate, and manipulate the people closest to her. She had exploited emotions, trust, and family bonds to achieve her goal, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. The question now wasn't just how we could repair the damage, it was whether the damage could be repaired at all. Every action taken by Lily had left a permanent mark, and every choice we made in response would either contain the chaos or escalate it further. By the next morning, the household was irrevocably changed. Rachel's trust was shattered, Mark was paralyzed by guilt and confusion, and Lily was thriving, calm and untouchable, a master of the storm she had created. I realized then, with a mixture of fear and resolve, that the coming days would define the fate of our family. There was no turning back, no easy solution. Lily had set the stage, and we were all actors in a drama we had never auditioned for. The days following Lily's revelation were nothing short of a nightmare. Rachel barely ate, barely slept, and every conversation with Mark became an emotional battlefield. She oscillated between anger, heartbreak, and disbelief, while Mark attempted to explain his side, how he never wanted this, how he had been manipulated but the damage was done. Lily, of course, remained perfectly composed. She moved through the chaos with an almost supernatural calm, offering support to both Rachel and Mark while secretly delighting in their confusion and pain. Every word she spoke was calculated to maintain control, to exacerbate tensions, and to make herself seem indispensable. I tried to intervene repeatedly. I approached Mark privately, showing him the evidence I had gathered, texts, social media posts, moments I had documented over the past weeks. You need to see what she's done, I pleaded. This isn't just a mistake, she's manipulating you. Mark glanced at the evidence, hesitation written all over his face. I don't know, he admitted. I want to believe you, but part of me feels like I'm missing something. She's clever. Exactly, clever. That was the problem. Lily had anticipated every move, every suspicion, and had built a network of psychological traps. The more we tried to expose her, the more she adjusted, maintaining the appearance of innocence while tightening her grip on the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's emotional state deteriorated. She withdrew from friends, stopped attending planning meetings for the wedding, and spent hours in her room, replaying every moment with Lily and Mark in her mind. Each memory, each interaction, now carried the sting of betrayal. And yet, Lily continued to insert herself into their lives, often under the guise of concern, offering small acts of help that made Rachel second-guess her own suspicions. At one point, Lily even orchestrated a family intervention, positioning herself as the mediator, the voice of reason. She subtly questioned Rachel's reactions, planting seeds of doubt. Are you sure you're seeing this clearly? Maybe Mark didn't realize the implications. Maybe you're overreacting. It worked. Rachel, already overwhelmed, began to doubt herself. Mark, meanwhile, oscillated between guilt and confusion, unable to navigate the complex web of lies and manipulations. And I, despite my determination to protect them, realized that Lily's cunning might be too much for anyone to counteract directly. The pregnancy became the ultimate weapon in her arsenal. She revealed details selectively, creating emotional leverage, and ensuring that both Rachel and Mark felt trapped. Friends and extended family began to sense tension, and whispers circulated about the scandal, though no one knew the full story. Lily controlled the narrative, carefully managing who knew what and when, ensuring maximum psychological impact. I began to notice changes in my own behavior. I became hypervigilant, watching every interaction, every word, every glance. Sleep was impossible. The stress was relentless. Lily's manipulation was pervasive, and her capacity for cruelty was staggering. She didn't just want attention, she wanted control, and she had achieved it with terrifying precision. By the end of the week, the family was on edge. Rachel's trust was fractured, Mark's confidence in himself was shattered, and Lily moved through the house like a calm, untouchable force. No one could predict her next move, and every attempt to intervene risked further chaos. And yet, I knew that the climax was approaching. Lily had spent months orchestrating this scenario, and now, with the pregnancy public and emotions frayed, she would either solidify her control completely or make a mistake that would expose her. The question was when, and whether we would be able to act before the damage became irreversible. The house had become a battlefield of emotion, secrecy, and strategy. Every conversation was a calculated move, every action scrutinized, and every interaction loaded with tension. It was clear, Lily was no longer just the psychopathic younger sister, she was the mastermind of a family crisis that had no easy resolution. The tension in the house reached a breaking point one rainy evening. Rachel had spent hours locked in her room sobbing, while Mark paced the living room, tormented by guilt and indecision. Lily, predictably, was calm, sitting at the dining table with a faint, satisfied smile, as though she were watching a carefully scripted play unfold. It all came to a head when Rachel, finally gathering courage, confronted Lily directly. "How could you do this?" she shouted, her voice cracking. "How could you betray me, betray him, betray our family?" Lily's eyes glinted with amusement. "Betrayal," she said softly, almost mockingly. "No, I created opportunity. I simply followed my instincts. People are weak. They take what's given to them, and sometimes they don't see the truth until it's too late." Mark stepped forward, attempting to explain, but Rachel waved him away. She was too hurt, too shocked to hear his defense. And in that moment, the entire family realized the extent of the chaos Lily had wrought. I stepped in, presenting the documentation I had collected over the past months, texts, social media evidence, recordings, and detailed notes of interactions. The evidence was undeniable. Lily had manipulated everyone deliberately, targeting Mark emotionally, eroding trust, and controlling perception. Lily's calm demeanor faltered, just slightly. She smirked, but the smirk carried tension. "You think this changes anything?" she asked. "I've already won. The truth doesn't matter as much as control." The confrontation forced the family to face difficult choices. Rachel decided to postpone the wedding indefinitely, needing time to process the betrayal and reevaluate her relationship with Mark. Mark, shaken and guilt-ridden, took a step back, realizing he had been manipulated and that he needed to make amends for his own lack of awareness. Lily, confronted but unbroken, was forced to acknowledge the consequences of her actions. Though she remained psychologically calculating, even she could not deny the emotional fallout. Trust shattered, relationships strained, and the family forced to navigate a new reality. Over the following weeks, therapy sessions, family discussions, and honest conversations began to repair some of the damage. Rachel and Mark worked to rebuild trust, not just with each other, but with themselves, learning to recognize manipulation and emotional coercion. Lily, meanwhile, received counseling, not punishment, at first, but the awareness that her actions had lasting consequences. The emotional impact lingered. Rachel never fully forgot the betrayal, and Mark carried the weight of his own mistakes and vulnerabilities. But through this pain, the family discovered resilience. We learned that honesty, vigilance, and communication were essential to surviving even the most calculated deceit. As for Lily, her behavior remained a cautionary tale. The experience exposed the depths of her cunning and manipulation, forcing her to confront herself, while the rest of us learned to navigate life more cautiously, aware that danger sometimes comes from those closest to us. In the end, the crisis brought clarity. Bonds were tested, trust was rebuilt slowly, and the family emerged stronger but wary, forever changed by the calculated, shocking actions of the youngest sister who had turned our lives upside down. The lesson was unmistakable. Even the people we think we know best can harbor secrets and intentions beyond imagination. And while we cannot control others, we can protect ourselves by observing, questioning, and never underestimating the power of calculation, manipulation, and psychopathic cunning in someone we once called family.